The praying thing only dropped in the last like 4 years. And it's just every day. There is not a moment that I'm not praying internally or externally. Like every single moment of my day is a prayer.
What has that done for you?
It's just shifted my relationship with recognizing that we're always manifesting consciously or unconsciously. And I could be filling the in-between moments with just worrying and living in some sort of future or past timeline of like, what am I going to be doing later? Or what hasn't been done and how it could have been done better. And it just creates this kind of like hamster wheel of emotion that goes on inside of my head. Or I could be filling those in-between moments with prayer. Like having a conversation with something that cannot be named, but that created all of this. Mm. And recognizing from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, I have an opportunity to pray. And pray could be in actions. It's not just me sitting with my hands in the prayer position, but it's who am I being, or how am I speaking to myself from the moment I wake up to the moment I brush my teeth, to my shower, to my morning drink, to getting in the Uber, to coming over here, to interacting with the individuals that present themselves in my life. Every single moment is an opportunity to manifest that which I'm calling in by being that which I wish to see.
Was there some big transition for you to come into this place that you're presenting presently, and you're in a state of prayer and in a state of play and in a state of like bringing light to every room that I see you come through? Was there like another side of that?
Yeah.
And I presume you're not always just like lightness. I presume there's other sides of it presently too.
To be able to access like love and like genuine heart-centered connection is at the capacity in which I'm willing to fully disintegrate my ego. No. And so I'm 4 planets in Scorpio. If you've got anything, like, know anything to do with astrology, that's like the depth, the underworld, the sorceress, the shamanic realm. That's also like the crunchy emotions. It's like making peace with the complete destruction of my ego, whatever that wants to look like. But when the dark side of the moon presents itself, it's fully softening and dying into it, so that then my capacity to love others is born from a deep place of empathy because I understand suffering. So outside of like that specific, I mean, that's a whole topic in itself, but referring to, has there been a specific thing that has happened?
Yeah.
There's been many things that have happened, but there are like very big pieces that have been locked in, of one of them being my hearing loss, or like my hearing decreasing at 7 years ago, diagnosed with a hereditary hearing disorder. It's got to be really careful with the language you use around it, but my brother and I were both diagnosed with it, and it basically, what we were diagnosed with it's hereditary, being that it's within the family genetics. It's progressive, meaning it's getting worse, and they don't have a known cure for it because they don't even know what's actually really causing it. So it was kind of like, good luck. And you dish that information in my mid-20s. It almost felt like a death sentence at that point. It was like taking one of my limbs, but almost invisibly, because if someone's hard of hearing, you don't know about it. Like if someone's blind or they're missing a limb, you know how to support them. But like if someone's not hearing what's going on in the space, it's an invisible challenge. So I could be in a room full of people and feel very, very alone because I don't know what the heck is going on, because the conversation has gone so fast and everyone's laughing, and I just all of a sudden feel like I'm not in the room anymore. But I don't even know how to communicate that with people without standing up and being like, everybody, I'm hard of hearing. So like, just wanted to let you know, like, it's also not something I want to keep talking about. So it's been a really powerful dance for me. But what it's done over the past 7 years is it's catapulted me into a realm of vibration. So it's not about what the 5 senses pick up of somebody's experience and that being everything. It's actually invited me so deeply into the realm of frequency. And in frequency, it's words lie all the time, but energy never lies. But are we actually trained enough in the extrasensory perception of feeling to navigate the world like an animal? And so that's what this has taught me over the past 7 years of self-exploration, is recognizing that this is a frequency game we're playing in. And there's resonance and there's dissonance, and there's enrichment and depletion. And so based off of navigating the world through vibration, I just recognize like there are certain actions that raise my frequency and therefore pack me with nutrients, so that just enter a space, I don't even need to say anything and my presence will be felt. Same vice versa with those that have done the work and those that haven't. We've become so distracted by like, what do you look like? How many followers you have? Or how much money you have? Or like the impact that you're making, whatever business you've created, and therefore it places it some sort of hierarchical position within the container. But I don't operate like that. I don't care what it is that you've done. I care who you be in this moment and how present you are. And that was the reflection I gave to you the other day when we were sitting at the dinner table, and I just was watching and observing, because it was a very loud space, and I'll go quiet in those spaces because it's too much information for me. But if I just become the observer, then I just stop being in this like, oh, I'm worrying about like being able to hear what people are saying. And I just focus on one person or two people in conversation, which is what happened when we were having a conversation. And you were in conversation with Julia, and you were asking really brilliant questions, but you weren't asking questions and then kind of dwindling your presence. You asked brilliant questions that were thought-provoking, an opportunity for you to get to know this person in front of you. And then you stayed fully present with her. And then you reflected the beauty that you witnessed within her answer. Now that's an incredible 3-step process to melt the heart of anybody in that you meet. Ask dope questions, listen intently, and reflect the beauty that you see.
Including melt your own heart.
Including what?
Melting your own heart.
In the process
of
being fully present in the genius of another being.
Yeah.
So I just had to acknowledge that in that moment, that now here we are having this podcast.
You, so something that I've been curious about recently, because I've experienced kind of like a reoccurring sensation of loneliness throughout my life. And I have had the opportunity likely to experience that with like an even perhaps objectively stronger pendulum swing, whether subjectively that was your experience or not. You would have every reason for it to objectively be stronger, in the sense of like starting to lose sound, and everyone else is having this experience and I'm not. And I'm like, start to feel this outsider sensation, which I think is resonant with a lot of people, even with all of their faculties and senses and money and power and influence or whatever the heck they have or not. How have you navigated that, and what lessons have you been able to bring back through that experience for other people that are experiencing that sensation of loneliness?
Yeah, it's definitely been, loneliness has definitely been one of the massive words of curriculum that's presented itself throughout this initiation of my hearing. And there's loneliness in the sense of just like wanting human connection, and then there's another degree, like you said, the pendulum swinging pretty hardly in like one direction of loneliness, in the sense of being still around people and feeling crazy, like wildly lonely. Because unless we've actually experienced it ourselves, it's very hard to actually fully understand the experience of it. And so I can share with people that this is my experience, but their level of empathy can't really reach to the level of what I'm actually experiencing. There's like a level of empathy of like, oh, I empathize with your experience. Like, I feel you. I feel compassion for your experience. But like, do you actually fully understand from the inside out? And there's like, I can only name, less than a handful of people that really understand the realm that I navigate on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, on a minutely basis, because it's not something like, oh, I've now made peace with the fact that I can't hear the situation. It is on a minutely basis that I'm in the car with the Uber driver and he's chatting with me and he's driving and he's front facing and there's the sound of the engine of the car and I can't read his lips. And I'm like, I want to hear what this guy has to say. I want to connect with this person, but I can't right now. So I just tune out. Or there's an incredible master teacher that is speaking in front of me that I've flown all the way to the other side of the world, and he goes in to talk and address the group that are people that are there, and it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to sit with this master, and I can't hear a word he's saying. And like the deep sadness in that moment of feeling like there's something outside of my control that is limiting me from being able to experience what is right here in front of me. And so I've partnered like a very deep sadness with a partnership of loneliness, even in a room full of people. And I've had to come down to the question, is my presence alone enough? Like, without me contributing anything, without me saying anything, just being at the table and I can't hear what's going on, am I worthy to be here? And that's been like, the answer was no at the beginning when I was first being in the exploration of that question. I had to have something brilliant about myself. Otherwise, why are you here? Because you just being you is not enough. That's a very problematic core belief that I think runs in so many people, regardless of whether you're hearing loss or not. that wants to be addressed, because I do believe, my higher self does believe, that just by being me, just by being you, just by being alive, you're inherently worthy. That's your birthright. So some sort of belief system that is laced over that I have to achieve something to be worthy in this space, is actually meaning that like there's some sort of trauma bond between me and this group of individuals that is actually placing me in this position. So that piece of saying, am I worthy enough just by being in the space, has taken me on a whole like years of a journey of from the darkness retreat to sitting with plant medicines to creating, but not from a place of creating for a goal, but creating just for the process of it, and allowing myself to soften deeper into the present moment of what it is that's actually going on inside of me, and how can I reconcile that relationship with worthiness. And so I think that there's a beautiful piece that locked in for me, is that our greatest challenge is also our greatest gift. And this is the foundation of the Gene Keys, the teachings of the Gene Keys by Richard Rudd. Every single superpower has a really deep challenge within it. And you can only access the superpower through the challenge. So it's not this journey of enlightenment, or this journey into self-awareness or illumination of our higher self. Is not this. It is like this. It's like deep into the pain of the experience. And so I looked at my Gene Keys, and it's a hologenetic profile based off of it's a living transmission founded on astrology and an ancient text called the I Ching. It breaks down the 64 archetypes that run through the human genome and the human experience. It also comes down to the 11 archetypes that predominantly run through you. And then within each archetype, there is a shadow, there's a gift, and what we call the enlightened state, which is the CD. So every single person, just by being alive, have profound capabilities. Now, it's going to require curiosity to actually go on the crazy, wild internal journey to understand what those are. Not everybody's going to do that, but everybody has it, which is beautiful, which I love, because it creates an equality within all human beings, like as opposed to someone's got these superpowers and someone doesn't. It's just either a case of remembering or not remembered yet. And I had deafness in my Gene Keys chart. And when I saw that it is one of the archetypes that run in my DNA, I was like, wait, what? What is happening? And I read it and I saw that there's the deafness, which is not actually fully listening to my own intuition and my own internal landscape, and listening to the world of shoulds from the moment that I was born, of who I was supposed to be based off of societal expectation of success. And the deafness is actually shutting myself off from my own unique genius. And it's also, there's a gift in the deafness, which is actually like shutting out the noise of the world. There's so much noise. Like, we're not speaking to improve the silence. We're speaking to be seen based off of some sort of inherent unworthiness that my presence alone is not enough. So there's a lot of noise. But to actually like recognize that I have a truth filter. And when I tune into someone, I'm going to be reading them way beyond the words, way beyond the physical appearance, way beyond what we present ourselves as this buffet version of us that we think the world will like and accept and deem worthy. But I go deeper than that. It's the frequency behind the words that I'm picking up on, and where the words are actually coming from. So what I realized, actually, the gift of the deafness was epiphany and insight. The ability to read a situation way deeper than what is being presented with the five senses. Now that is a superpower. But here's the thing. I could only actually allow this to play out at the capacity of what stories I was placing on it. And the stories up until that point of the realm of loneliness was that something wrong with me. And that was just perpetuating this deep loneliness.
What do you think the root of "there's something wrong with me" is? Or I'm not worthy of love, or I'm not enough for this group or this community? Or I feel like many people are kind of secretly playing out that story. And you're in this big group and everyone kind of has their own individual neuroses and feeling alone, or feeling like not enough, or feeling like I need to do something in order to belong here. And they're all kind of like playing this charade together. And no one, maybe depends on the group, but maybe they haven't been like vulnerable or honest enough with themselves to present like, oh, we're all kind of doing the same thing. Yeah.
And that's why also sometimes it can be a little bit draining to be in the space.
Yeah.
because there is this is, I mean, you've sensed it like already. You can feel it. Like there is an inherently unworthiness that is playing out. I mean, not just within the groups that we've been in, but also just like in general.
Yeah.
And what my intuition and insights and perception of reality has like broken this down to is ultimately our unworthiness, or our belief that we're unworthy, is very profitable. Like,
yeah, which sounds like conspiracy theory.
multi-billion-dollar business is founded off of our unworthiness. Yeah, like we need to consume X, Y, and Z to create some sort of belief in worth. It feeds this giant consumerism hungry ghost that operates predominantly the whole of the United States. Like it's a one massive industry and business that profits of us believing that we are not worthy. So we'll see it across so many different industries, whether it's the makeup industry or the clothing industry or the car industry, or like, I mean, there's just so many places, almost impossible to name all of them.
Yeah.
And then there's another piece that like this hasn't just been running for our generation. This runs generations deep of unworthiness. So from the moment that we're born and we for the first however many years of our life, we look to our mothers as a reference point of how we're doing, and a mother has a deep sense of unworthiness. We start believing that is actually who we are, because anything unresolved within our mother or father then gets projected onto us, and then we're now healing the generation before us before we can even get a go with our lives and our unique dharma. So there's something that somebody said the other day, which I really resonate with, is like this next generation, it will not, if we've done the work within this generation, which a lot of people are now having the privilege to be able to do, a privilege to actually move beyond survival into thriving mode, then the next generation won't have to heal our generation's work, so that they'll actually from the get-go be able to be in their genius and be in their brilliance. But I think we're also still healing, you know, the memory of our matriarch and patriarchal lines.
Yeah, it's interesting. It feels like there's like a juxtaposition of a complete lack of sovereignty and agency, and I'm just like a perpetuation of all of the traumas and hurts and all things in the past, and also simultaneously another line running of complete, utter agency and sovereignty and capacity to create magic and shift bloodlines and ancestry and future and past and all of that. They're almost like running right beside each other.
100%. It's this really sweet paradox as well of like, there's something outside of myself, but I have all the power to do it. If once we become self-aware, then we hold the key to be able to heal the entire bloodline or every single generation that comes after us.
How do we become self-aware?
That's a great question. I think that, the first thing that's really dropping in is taking responsibility or taking ownership for our emotions, like what it is that is actually like in our world. The second that we are blaming the outside world as to why things are the way that they are, is we don't have any power to do anything about it. And we keep perpetuating these lessons that keep presenting themselves because we're living in a victim frequency and pointing the finger out. Well, when you point the finger out, there's four fingers back. Like, it's like, if I blame you as to why I feel the way that I feel, then I have no power to actually evolve. And grace is the frequency of devoid of all blame. Like, not to blame the world as the way that it is. So once we become self-aware, it's actually recognizing, oh, I'm just curious. Why do I feel angry right now? Why am I feeling jealousy? Even the curiosity alone to ask why this emotion is present starts us on a journey of learning our own emotions and our own state, and therefore stop blaming the external world, which then gives us the power to evolve. And then the other piece that is important is stillness. Just like quiet, just even for an hour a day, not even 5 minutes a day. An hour is quite extreme, but like 5 in today's society, but like 5 minutes and just sitting in stillness, because pure originality can only be born in stillness. Otherwise, we're just recycling everything we've seen and read, and we are inundated with information now with social media and just the internet. And it's like Bo Berman, it's like a little bit of everything all of the time, and it's literally a little bit of everything all of the time. But like, if we just have stillness, this is where we can actually start to have a conversation with that cannot be named. And
from your perspective, what is the adaptive qualities of victimhood? A person that's tied to victimhood, tied to pointing and blaming, and kind of what the way you're describing it, kind of like giving their power away. Mm-hmm. What's adaptive about that? Like it's
what do you mean by adaptive?
It's some type of survival mechanism, or it wouldn't be a thing. Mm-hmm. So there's some value that individual is getting from the blaming, mm-hmm. I would presume. Mm-hmm. Like, what is that serving for that person, if anything?
I mean, ultimately, it's not serving in the long run, but in the short term. My perspective would be that there's some sort of belief system about themselves that is deemed so unworthy or unlovable that if they agree that they're taking ownership, then it can confirm that belief. Yeah. So it's easier in this moment for me to blame. It's easier for me to blame you, because if I take ownership, that means that what I actually at the core of my being believe about myself is true. Mm-hmm. And that's painful. Mm-hmm. I don't want to face that. Mm-hmm. So it's easier for me to blame you. So I'm just going to say it's because of what you did. So it's not even maybe it's not even a conscious decision. Maybe it's literally a habitual pattern of how we navigate with the world. And it could be based off of how we've also seen it be exhibited from our parents. Oh, my mum and dad like navigated the world through this. And so I also too, this is what I've just known. This is how I operate in the world. However, what I have also seen within people that blame the world, they just keep perpetuating the same challenges that keep showing up until there's some reconciliation of ownership. Mm-hmm. And also there's like there's like magnetic poles. So you've had very magnetic people that draw people in, and there's a beautiful magnetism of a deep internal work that they've done, or there's a repellent. And those that blame the world create this repellent. And so if you want to know what's going on in someone's internal landscape, look at the world around them. Look at their relationships. It's all a testament of their internal narrative, 60,000 thoughts a day on average that they're thinking about themselves. And so the greatest journey, I really believe it, the greatest journey we could ever do is to get curious as to why we are the way that we are and what thought patterns are serving or not serving, and how can we be the student of that which is not serving to shift it into an empowering dialogue so that we can actually create a beautiful world for ourselves, and then that becomes our contribution to the collective.
How does a person who probably subconsciously is afraid to actually examine the shadow or dark aspects of themselves, mm-hmm. the parts that they haven't been able to see or be with. Mm-hmm. And so instead they've been in a place of blaming, kind of pointing outward. How does a person develop the courage to start to be willing to be with those places within themselves?
That's a great question. I'm still a student of that. I'm witnessing it. I'm witnessing it in the people that I'm around. I'm also witnessing, I would say I'm witnessing it within myself, but my default is to fully take ownership of any uncomfortable emotions and triggers that present themselves. There's like the 5 T's: trust, the trigger, to teach. It's so easy to like be mad at the trigger, but that's actually like, you ain't gonna grow. It's just gonna keep presenting itself. But when I see like, oh, Aaron triggered me about something, wonder what that's teaching me about myself. Why is there a part of me that's like reactive towards that? Because that's just subjective to what I react to it. And my reaction is just a deeper part of myself that has not got awareness in it and has been trapped by some experience that's happened in the past that's now projecting onto a present timeline. But it's actually got nothing to do with you. So that's a level of awareness. That's like it's just a shift in consciousness of taking ownership. I think it gets to a point where it's so uncomfortable and there's so many fractured relationships and it's so deeply painful to be in this way that there has to be a pattern interrupt. There has to be, this isn't working for me. I have like 5 relationships that are all strained and no one speaks to me. I'm not connected with my family. Like these kind of experiences that create this way of operating to be so tight and so uncomfortable that there has to be some sort of pattern interrupt. Yeah. And so some people go to plant medicines, specifically ayahuasca, maybe, for example. It gives them a shift of perspective of their current reality and allows them to see what actually is pertaining to this issue. Maybe darkness retreat and silence. There are certain tools and modalities, vision quest, 10 days in nature, water fasting, there are ways to create a pattern interrupt into the same mindset that got them into it. It's not going to get them out of it. So they require some sort of pattern interrupt. And usually it gets to the point where there's so much suffering that there has to be a shift.
Yeah, the visualization that I'm having as you're speaking is almost like we're on a highway, we're driving down our lane, and then this is kind of two metaphors that don't necessarily connect, but there's a fracture. At some point in our lives, if we're on a path that doesn't serve us, they're likely, if we're lucky enough, we'll have a fracture. Mm-hmm. And that fracture almost is like a split to an exit ramp, if you choose to take it.
Yeah.
And so it's like the fracture actually is the gift.
Exactly, because now all of a sudden you're on a path you would not have actually...
The gift that you've been doing everything in your power to avoid your whole life.
Yeah, exactly. But the very thing is, the thing that we're avoiding holds the power for our fullest essence.
Yeah.
It's such another paradox of like, the thing I'm so afraid of is actually holds the key of my liberation. Mm. And when that mindset gets locked in, for me, the way that I navigate, if I come across a really uncomfortable part, like I put myself in a situation where I'm like, oh my God, I'm so uncomfortable. Oh, I've gone really rigid and my whole body's gone stiff. And I'm like, for the way that my lens perceives that experience is, oh, I need to go deeper into this because this is holding some sort of my power here. Mm. So I'm always constantly in the navigation of being a student of that which doesn't feel good. Mm. I want to understand it more. Mm. I just want to break it down and like chew it out. And then ultimately the path of integration, or I believe what true wisdom is like, yes, you get exposed to some sort of knowledge. I read a book, I learn from a teacher, but it's still sitting here in this like kind of like invisible cloud that's like above my head. And the only way that it actually becomes who I am is through the art of integration. And integration is like infusing it into the mundane moments, because a miraculous life is just born from a million mundane moments. Mm. And like how I'm actually shifting this knowledge and like absorbing it into my being is who I am in the mundane moments, so that then I can come and sit on the podcast and just be the essence of all of my life's learnings from all of my heartbreak and my breakdowns and my breakthroughs. And it's incorporated into every single 75 trillion cells of my body. And now I can sit here and I just chat and flow, but I'm not trying to remember anything because it's already locked in.
Yeah, there's almost like, at least experience with myself, like a distrust of core self. Whatever core self, like deeper self, essence, spirit, wisdom, mm-hmm. all of those aspects. Mm-hmm. And then instead there's like a wrapping of memorization, which is how we're educated in school. Mm-hmm. It's kind of an interesting thing. Like we're bred from kindergarten mm-hmm. to pass the Scantron test, memorize these things, get the medal, get the trophy. There's not a lot of like, let's teach you how to deeply listen to yourself.
God, that would be
trust
such
yourself.
A different place if we've been given these tools that actually help us navigate this reality. It's like emotional intelligence, nonviolent communication. Like where was that in school? Like that's really important information.
I think so.
It's so important. Like our relationships, the way that we weave, how we interact with people, like a deeper level of empathy. I sucked in school. I sucked. Like I couldn't remember anything. It's not how my brain works. Like I had a really hard time retaining the information, and then I would have like panic attacks during the examination. And I also really struggled with this whole concept that we're all graded from the same grading scale. Like, and then if you get an A, then you're a good student, and if you get a D, you're a bad student. And I'm like, wait, what happened to being our uniqueness is our power?
Yep.
Like we're all literally filled into an ice cube tray and given like a thumbs up or a thumbs down based off of some grade. Yep. That it was formed based off of your ability to memorize. And
it's like a dolphin trying to climb a tree.
Yeah.
Like, well, you suck.
Yeah.
Like, you are garbage.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Climbing,
you're
bro.
such a shitty elephant.
We're all tree climbers here, bro. What are you doing?
Exactly. You all just like look at the elephant like, oh my gosh, you are a pure creation of divinity within this majestic creature. I'll be like, oh, I'm judging you on your ability to climb a tree. You suck. Oh. And then that belief gets planted into our consciousness and builds the fabric of the way that we navigate the world and see it through this lens of this deep inherent unworthiness, because some teacher some time ago, based off of some curriculum that they didn't even create, said that you're not worthy or that you suck. Like, what? Wait, hold on a second. Like, I'm gonna actually have to call bullshit on that. Like, to be human is one of the most miraculous things. And to actually allow ourselves to tap into this realm that is so far beyond memory, but it's actually into a deep level of listening to that which is needed. Now we have real potency. This is where my prayers come from. I just listen to the space. I don't hear everything, but I hear everything. And I listen to the space and I speak from that place, but I will never practice a prayer. I will never memorize a speech. I did a TEDx talk and they were like, we need word for word what you're going to say. And I was like, I cannot do that. Like, it's just, you're literally going to get a cardboard cutout version of me if you ask me to give you every word of what I'm going to say on this talk. I can give you a masculine structure of like, I'll keep it within the time frame. I'll give you a beginning, middle, and an end, and I'll make PowerPoint slide presentation on each piece. But what happens in between that is in the God's hands, is in the goddess's hands. Like, I can't speak from that place. And if that doesn't work for you, I can't give this talk. And they shifted it for me and they allowed me to do that as long as I gave them the PowerPoint slides. But every time I would practice with Andre, like, he was like, okay, let's do a practice round. And I would do it. And he was like, okay, let's do it again. And I would do it again. Every single time it was vastly different. And he was like, I can't give you feedback because every single one is different. Like, I don't know how to like support you in this. And when I got up on that stage, I was so nervous because I had to like trust in what was going to come through. But there's something that just moves through me and all of a sudden, boom, I'm like right in to feeling the audience, feeling what's most alive, popping jokes that I never had prepared. If I would prepare a joke beforehand, it's like, it's flat. It's got to be in the moment. And that's when it lands. And it's just not about the words. It's the frequency behind the words and where it comes from.
How do you balance? It sounds like you're describing, to use like the labels, like femininity, like tapping into that expressiveness and the wildness and kind of like the lack of containment, structure, organization go. It's kind of like, let's just be with what is and like allow that color and expression to come out. So it seems like you have like a proclivity towards that direction. How do you balance that masculine form within yourself?
So the Gene Keys talks about, I'm a student of the Gene Keys. I've been a student for many years. And in the Gene Keys, it talks about the masculine and feminine. If you were to like look at a cell under a microscope and you see like go right into like seeing the whole cell, you'll see the cell membrane, and then you see like the life force energy, which like vibrates the cell. You can't actually see the life force energy, but it's like, it's there, it's moving it. Now the masculine is the cell membrane. It holds the cell together. Without the masculine, it would die. The cell would die without the membrane. If you didn't have the life force energy, the chi, the feminine essence, then you have a dead cell still. Like, it's still dead. It doesn't have any life force. So for even magic to be born in this dimension, it has to have the structure for it to be born through. Otherwise, it's just like pouring water over a countertop and being like, all right, there's your drink. And it's like, it's just water everywhere. It's a fucking mess. So there has to be a balance between the masculine and feminine principles, not one like out of balance and out of the other. If we want to find that awakened state, the pineal gland sits between the left and the right lobes of the brain, the masculine and feminine side of the brain. So that awakened state is that beautiful balance between the two. Now, from my perspective, what I'm seeing in the collective is that the masculine is very much out of balance with the feminine. Our relationship to Mother Earth, our relationship to our bodies, which is the earth, is super out of whack, and we are in this like hustle consumerism mindset, and the masculine is like super strong. It's like we've gone to the gym and we've worked on our upper body, but we've skipped leg day for the past 6 months.
Is it the masculine or toxic masculine, or is it just masculine, period?
I would just say more so around and now I want to be really careful with this because I think this is also really a prime topic of like masculine and feminine, men and women. Masculine and feminine lives within everyone. So I'm not saying masculine talking about men. I'm not saying feminine talking about women. I'm talking about the different principles or the poles that happen within every single individual. And I think that that there has been a disconnect with the realm of emotions. There has been a disconnect with the realm of creativity. There has been a disconnect with the realm of play, of a deep level of listening. And when I say emotions, also, like, that's not just the soft, loving, oh, this is the feminine. No, the feminine's fucking sacred rage.
Yeah.
The feminine is what the actual fuck? And being okay to say that out loud without being exiled from the community.
Yeah.
Like that's also that. So it's just recognizing where in my own life, as a man or a woman or anything in between, it doesn't matter. How am I relating to my own emotions, and am I giving myself permission to actually feel them, or am I suppressing them thinking I just should override it and do because my worth is placed in how much I achieve? That is the disconnect of the masculine and feminine within our own consciousness. So when I say that I see that it's out of balance, is that like we need more safe spaces to feel our emotions, without being the fear of being exiled. And that is within all of us. And so for me, when I go back into my own personal experience of like, well, it sounds like you're very strongly in the feminine. I have the masculine structure. I have 3 planets in Capricorn. Like, I can build a business. I can like make money. I can create what it is that I want to create. But where I create from is the feminine.
Yeah. Where do you feel most alive? Like, we all have access to all the things, but like what like brings you most alive?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And recognizing it's not about
and
what
maybe
you
it's
do.
both. You might be like 50-50. You know, it's not like a person needs to be one thing. And maybe they might evolve. Maybe through their 20s, they were one thing, and then this other latent expression started coming out in their 30s, and then it changed again in their 40s. And that's okay.
But it's a beautiful dance, recognizing it's never still like the ocean. And so we're just constantly in this constant flux of giving permission to the most sacred thing, which is.
It seems almost like there's culturally, we're like going through some level of like an autoimmune disease where we're almost attacking ourselves. It's like the cytoplasm of the cell is attacking the cell wall. Like the cell wall is like, you know, energy in here, like not important. Like, we're about protection, we're about containment. And then the internal aspect of the cell is like, you know, you've got no life, you've got no life force, you got nothing without me. Meanwhile, the whole time they are one.
Exactly. Exactly. And that is the piece, is that we're transcending now, as we're evolving as a species, this binary experience of right and wrong, which is implemented us through the great religions and through school and through, I mean, so many different modalities that keep us imprisoned in this internal dialogue with ourselves that says that, like, if I do this, I'm good. If I do this, I'm bad. If I do this, I'm right. If I do this, I'm wrong. And actually, that is the masculine and feminine fighting with itself. It's the cell wall and the life force energies fighting with each other, as opposed to recognizing that it's all interlaced and interconnected. And the most sacred thing is what is, and just allowing that to breathe through without judging it.
Which involves a lot of trust.
Oh my gosh. That's a whole journey in itself. in a world that everybody is like sort of fighting themselves and fighting each other, the biggest revolution we can ever actually do is to start like loving all of ourselves. Like, it's like every part of it, whatever it presents itself, even feeling in a group of people and feeling unworthy, to like love that little girl or little boy inside of us that's just like a little afraid in that moment, and like learning to love that part of ourselves. That's a fucking revolution. That's the only place this revolution externally is going to happen, is when enough people actually start making peace with their own mind.
I've asked a lot of people this. I asked Gabor Mate this like a couple months ago in the last episode, and I'm going to ask you again.
P.S. By the way, congratulations. He's epic. I'm so happy that he came on your podcast.
Oh, he's great. We've done several. He's been like, I've got to do like body work, Rolfing stuff with him. He's been like very receptive to connecting, which has been really good. I love him.
So special. His wisdom, he's like a great grand oak tree.
Yeah, he's like a true elder. That's why I've told him several times. I'm like, bro, like you're like an actual elder.
Yeah.
This is like the real thing.
We need elders in our community. There's a lack of elders that are holding the wisdom codes, and it's like when they do come around, it's just so much gratitude and reverence for their work.
So I want to talk about elders, and the question that I want to hear your perspective on: is there such a thing as inherent evil? Like, is Jeffrey Dahmer evil? Absolute, full stop, period. Oh, his essence is evil, manifested in human form. Or is it just pain wrapping goodness?
So first and foremost, before we go into this very light topic, I just want to reiterate that my truth is not the truth with a capital T.
Sure.
Right? I can only share with you from my perspective of how I've learned to navigate the world that best serves me to be able to create a life of design, or a life that actually serves me, as opposed to just a life that's like, ugh. And so anything that I say, the invitation is to just like tune into the resonance of where this resonates with you. If it doesn't resonate with you, great. If it does resonate with you, great. I'm not saying it's the way. It is a way that has supported me to navigate this dimension that I've found myself being plopped into, just floating on a massive rock hurling through space at millions of miles an hour, held into orbit by a giant ball of fire. I don't know what the fuck is going on. But here I am, sharing with you my perspective of how I navigate this world. So just that disclaimer put in place before we go into this.
Thank you.
It's important. And then I would say that, like, in the core of my being, I can't prescribe to there being evil. I do believe that there is a very big disconnect of us remembering like our truest nature, and it can be compiled trauma, like not just one generation, 2 generations, but it could be 4 generations of such deep distortion and pain that from the moment that child enters the earth, that's all they know is pain. That's all they know is survival. It's all they know is suffering. And so the reference point of the polarity of how their brain works is just oscillating between pain and pain. So then it's just being recycled and it's compacted. It's like so much pressure of sedimental rock over hundreds of thousands of years or whatever, that it's pressured to a point where there is no other option than to just continue to perpetuate deep level of suffering. So I just think that it is a compiled essence of layers and layers of trauma that has been created. And there's just this belief that there is inherent evil. I don't necessarily subscribe to.
Cool.
I'm cruising.
Oh, you're cruising.
I love time.
Oh, bro, you're so easy
Bro,
right now.
you have spaciousness,
Bro, you're
man.
so spacious.
I love
you're
spaciousness,
so in your
by the way.
feminine right now.
I'm always at the airport an hour before my flight, at the gate, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm living the vida loca. I got my drink. I got all the time. It's good for me because I don't want to touch any domino with the frequency of stress. And if it means that I'm pushing it right to the last minute, I don't want to touch my travel day with stress. No, thank you. I'll be there. Always be there early. I'll be there early for everything. I was early for this.
I'm the opposite. I'm like the least amount of possible time I can spend in the airport is my preference. So I want to like run into the airplane.
Oh,
I want them to announce my name.
No.
Yep.
Oh,
because then I feel important. I hear Aaron Alexander. What the fuck? And I'm like, that's right.
I have arrived.
I just absorb it.
Hell no,
I take it all
bro.
in. My antennas
I
go
ain't
up.
doing that. No,
That's my shit.
No.
That's how I roll.
Anyways, we've got time, so let's go deep. All right, lay me the question again.
From your perspective, what is the at the root level of our human nature? Like what like are we? There's like the Thomas Hobbes perspective of life is in like the ancestral world is nasty, brutish, and short, and we'll all kill each other and we're just out for ourselves. You know, as there's maybe other perspectives where it's more like, oh no, like we're kind of more like Burning Man. If you put us together in a tribe of 80,000 people or whatever, we'll just actually be really kind to each other. We'll pick up trash and we'll take care of each other, and we kind of like self-police. Mm-hmm. I feel like we're probably both. But like from your perspective, what is the I don't know, the foundational qualities of human nature? I don't feel like I'm asking that question. I feel like I asked it better the first time.
Mm-hmm. So what's coming up for me would be that it's all of it.
Yeah.
It's all vibrational planes, vibrational existences. So if, for example, we don't have our basic survival needs, our root chakra, our foundation, taken care of, shelter, food, water, right. Our families are not safe, maybe they are safe, but that's a question that's on the table, then you're going to see the most animalistic side of humans, that we have that part of our brain that goes into full dog eat dog, survival of the fittest. I just got to make sure that myself and my family are fed and taken care of, and I'll do whatever it takes.
Yep.
We have that inside of ourselves, and it depends on where we're at in the evolution of our consciousness. We've just seen this in the past, like obviously the survival.
You see with lockdowns.
Huh?
Saw it with the lockdowns.
Yeah, I mean, and then we go into the lockdowns, and you just see the worst of humanity.
Oh yeah, your like best friends suddenly hate you.
Yeah, because
like,
are you vaccinated? Are you not vaccinated? If you're not vaccinated, fuck you. If you are vaccinated, oh fuck you. Like
it's
literally, we just but this is a tactic. This is called divide and conquer. Right? This is a classic tactic from the government. It divide the people because one of the only playing cards that we actually have is the numbers. Right. Everything else is all being frequency controlled.
We're like a bunch of ants.
Exactly. But like how many ants? If the ants
if ants turned against people, we'd be like, oh no.
Yeah.
It's a lot of body mass of ants out there.
The ants would take over the world. That is not a fact, by the way. Please do not quote me on that.
Yeah.
However, if we actually start working together, if we actually recognize, like Burning Man, for example, you use Burning Man as an example, so I'm going to go on that, is that the concept of Burning Man is founded from what can I contribute, not what can I get from this. Now that's a shift of consciousness. That's going like, oh, everything's free, but it's based off of a gift-giving economy. So you go with a gift. Everybody goes with a gift. And everywhere you go, if you need like a beautiful meal, and there's like this 5-course dinner that they're like, hey, have a seat, and you don't have to pay anything for it. But then all of a sudden, because you've received so much, you have this genuine generosity that starts flowing through you, and all of a sudden you want to give to this person, or like whether it's a massage or a deep level of listening or conversation or connection, but it starts to become the collective frequency that we start to hum at is the gifting energy. So this is where the synchronicities happen much faster because the collective energy hums at a different resonance. So we're going to hum at the resonance of the collective in which we're in. So if you live in Los Angeles, it's going to hum at a certain resonance. And there's sort of like a low key, or if not high key, essence of anxiety that exists within like, that frequency.
What can I get?
Exactly. And so that is like, what can I get? How can I be the best? How can I step on top of to be there? For example, I mean, there's obviously like micro pockets within that place of the City of Angels where there's just magnificent humans, which I've encountered and experienced.
Which it almost makes sense that some of those, I don't know, lack of better words, like light workers or there's like bodhisattva type figures would exist in such a place that's like amuck with darkness and confusion and
I mean, there's a reason why it's the biggest brainwashing capital of the whole world. Literally, most of the transmissions that touch the majority of the planet come out of Los Angeles, Hollywood, California. So by the nature of polarities, and then also placing the City of Angels, it's literally there are people placed within that are holding a certain frequency that are also creating media as medicine and transmitting it to the world too. So
it's like in order to experience a deepest level of joy, you also have to reciprocally experience that level of sorrow. Maybe
100%. My play, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, like 2 things I actually really know that I'm good at outside of that, I don't know, is playing and praying. My play is born from the capacity in which I'm willing to die. Like the amount that of pain, like the confusion, the pain of the hearing journey, the multitude of things that just we get dealt as being human in life in general. But I find that the contrast of the deep, months of sadness, depression, whatever, that has been presented within my experience is also my deep appreciation and recognition of the power of play and the importance of it and where the vitality, that's a whole side subject in itself, but I guess that comes back to your question of the inherent nature of humans. Well, we are our own individual beings, but we also are like tuning forks to the resonance of the individuals that we're surrounded by and what it is that they're actually creating. And if we have our basic survival needs taken care of, then we can actually start operating as a shoal of fish. Like that's actually peak human experience. So we've got like low frequency human experience, which is just pure survival mode, and we'll kill another just to make sure that we're safe and taken care of. And you're going to see the worst of humanity, very survival essence.
And we all have that within us.
Oh yeah, all of us. We have that reptilian brain. We all have like that side of us that will, this is why also I love very intense situations. I was trained in the military, in the Air Force for a couple of years. And those kind of spaces for me were...
British Air Force?
Yeah. those spaces for me is like my favorite place, because I get to see people's true nature, and I love that shit. That's why I also love the ayahuasca space, because you can sit up in your white robes and your mala beads and you're saying all the things and looking, and got all of your spiritual paraphernalia and you've got everything dialed, and then 2 or 3 cups of ayahuasca, we're really going to see your true nature and how much work you've done. And like, it's not a judgment of it at all, but it's also like, where are we actually without the masks, or without all of the spiritual lingo, or all of the fancy clothes, or all of the things, like what's actually going on in the core of our being. And same with survival spaces. And I was just in Peru, and there was a revolution that was happening at the time, with the people were like fighting back against the government. I was kept in the country, couldn't get out. All of the airports got shut down. We were in the middle of riots. Like, it was full survival mode. I was with a retreat full of people, and there was like a bus moving through the riots. So there was like barbed wire fence and tires on fire. There was brick barricades. There was people that were angry, and we were driving through it. And we had to stop to actually get the rubble out of the roads and move through, and really got to see firsthand, like, coming from the privilege of being able to be in a country that doesn't have this as the foundation of way that their government works, for the most part. Got to see the survival mode in firsthand. But for me, there was like a kink that came online within that space, because I actually got to see everybody's truest nature and how they respond under very intense situations. And I really got to see those that have done the very, very deep internal work and guided us to a place of safety. The men showing up as divine protectors, the men that didn't and started panicking, creating arguments in the back. Like, it was very telling for me. And for me, as the observer, I just start to really understand the truest nature of our beings without the comforts of who we pretend to be, or who we mask ourselves to be. Yeah,
there's a story, I don't remember the specific details. I think it was during like when the Germans were bombing England, or some were they bombing England, or bombing lots of places? I don't know enough about history.
The Germans bombing England?
Yeah, like Nazi times, Blitzkrieg, all that stuff. Anyways, bombing someplace, but there was people in mental institutions, and it was like men in particular is how the story goes, and they were like, comatose, out of it, totally dysregulated, like not functioning members of society. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly war is amongst us, and the fire engines needed to be driven and people needed to be protected, and it was like suddenly there was a purpose, there was a deep, meaningful purpose. Mm-hmm. And these people, as the story goes, which I think is a fact, they kind of come out of their delusion and out of their dream state, and they come into action because they have this deep, meaningful purpose. Mm-hmm. I feel like we all have that. Mm-hmm. It
also brings us together.
Yeah.
Like, there is such a beauty about the destruction. Not that I would ever wish the destruction upon anybody ever. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm referring to is that when there has been destruction, for example, a natural disaster, you'll see people come together, take in other families, feed them each other, like come together and huddle, set up a fire outside and everybody huddles by it. Like, there is an intimacy that is born again from the destruction. It's where destruction and beauty sit side by side.
It's like the cell wall melts temporarily. Uh-huh. So you're building your castle, building your fortress, protecting. And then in those situations, suddenly it's like this, I don't know, osmotic opening thing happens. Mm-hmm. Start to blend with each other. It's like, and in that process of that opening, I think it seems very healing.
Mm-hmm. There's a oneness that is reconnected again. And I do, in the core of my being, believe in the inherent goodness of humanity. And now that may be an unpopular perspective, because of the quote unquote bad that is in the world. And there's definitely a lot of suffering. And there's a thing called divine dissatisfaction of just like, there is never going to be enough work that can be done on this planet. Like, there's so many areas and so many pockets of this world that needs love and support and resources, and it's just never ending. And also there's just like, it can get lost in the divine dissatisfaction of like the amount of stuff and work that needs to be done. However, the question is if I can make one corner of the world more beautiful than when I found it, then is that enough? Like, if every single person came in with that perspective, if right now I can't, Mother Teresa said, if I can't feed 1,000 mouths, then just feed one. And just starting from that place of like, okay, if I can just, this individual recognizing every single body is God wrapped in physical form and an opportunity to reconcile karma, and just like, continuing to just stay present with whatever movie scene is presented right in front of your consciousness. This is a grand movie. You are the main role. You're also the narrator, and you're co-writing it with something so much greater than yourself. And every single movie slide is an opportunity to just keep loving and let love in. And anything that is obstructing that, become curious and be the student of it, which then over time just creates a beautiful, so many seeds planted that you end up living in a very fertile reality.
I like that. I like the Ram Dass suggestion of like everyone and everything essentially is God dressed up in drag. You know,
Exactly.
So like the person that stole your wallet, or the person that beat you up at the bar, or the woman or guy that left you, or you know, whatever the thing is, it's like, okay, I see you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, and then the other one that I like that I think is very therapeutic is to perceive adults as children dressed up in adult costumes. You know, we're all kind of like running this charade. And it's like, oh no, I see.
And that's also something for me is like a beautiful shift that I really want to play a part in with the life that I've been gifted, is to shift the narrative from artificial glamour to authentic beauty. And I think artificial glamour is only subjective really to like, it's like the feeding into the charades of it's like, well, what I look like from the outside in. And there's an artificial texture to it. But authentic beauty is not subjective to what physical body that you've incarnated into. It doesn't matter your genetics. It's about how much you love people and how much love you allow yourself to have access to. And then all of a sudden there's a magnetism that is born in people that genuinely love sentient life, love others, that creates them to be so beautiful. It's so far beyond the flesh being that you've been given.
I'm going to keep on quoting Ram Dass because that's all I got.
Ram Dass, he's so good, so brilliant.
I just defer to Ram Dass. The thing you said I like was who you are is vulnerable, or no, who you think you are is vulnerable. Who you are is not vulnerable. So like that's, I think when you're in that place where you feel vulnerable and you don't want to be vulnerable, you'll do everything you can to protect yourself. Mm-hmm. If you're able to just transition a bit of bandwidth over to that aspect of like who you actually always have been, the aspect of you that's never going to disappear. It's never going to, you know, it might change shape, but like that, the constitution of that thing has been here forever and will always be. Like we all have access to that aspect, and I'm only at the like training wheels level of starting to investigate that part within myself. But I think that can be a very therapeutic perspective, just to start to play with the experiment that perhaps who you are actually is invulnerable, and who you think you are is the vulnerable part that you're trying to protect.
Yeah, because there's a story and then there's truth, and they're two very different things. And a lot of the stories actually didn't start with us. Again, like
and what would happen if you really drop your fear?
Ooh, I had a great conversation with Boyd Varty yesterday, who was telling me about his time with Byron Katie. Are you familiar with her?
I've picked her up on my feet and twisted her around. And
you have? Byron Katie?
Yeah. She's game.
Oh, well, that is a woman that does not operate from a place of fear.
She's all play.
And he was telling me these stories of how like he would go on a walk with her. I love that you've connected with her. I love that you've also done acro with her, of course. So that makes perfect sense, but also wildly surprising and amazing. And he was telling me stories about how she would, you know, how she weaves and how she connects with people. And she just does not have fear in her psychic field. She went through a massive awakening from a very, very dark space. And she went through a huge awakening, which actually catapulted to a realm of no fear. And so Boyd said that, you know, he was sitting down at a workshop and she came over and sat next to him and never met him. He didn't know who she was, I don't think. And she just held his hand for like 30 minutes and just held his hand because that's what she wanted to do. There was no fear. And then she turned to him, looked him dead in the eye and just said, I really enjoyed holding your hand. Thank you. And then just got up and left. And that was how they connected. And he said that the way that she navigates the world is that she feels this impulse to connect or say something and she just does it. And there's not this story that is in the way of inhibiting that moment of connection with the outside world. Right. And she's no longer caught up with the stories, and she becomes curious as to where the stories even came from. And she has this 4-step process to turn the story back in and like take full ownership and rewrite the story in the moment. And so that's basically her relationship with fear, is that she's transcended the stories. And the stories create this like really fogged lens and perspective of how we perceive the world, which then stops the love in and out and the osmosis process of actually what's available to us. Recognizing that we live in an inherently abundant reality. There's no disconnection between us and nature is by default abundant, but we have all these stories that limit us from being able to actually receive everything that's already here. And so I think that living a life of no fear, I don't know. I've never done it. I'm like, I fully feel fear every single day in different ways, whether it's big or little, it doesn't really matter, but it's definitely laced into my consciousness.
The differentiation is so, like, I was riding my e-bike along the river the other day.
Swaggy, by the way, P.S.
Swaggy.
Told him at the beginning of this podcast,
Yeah.
Didn't quite make it onto the audio,
Just so
but
they
he
know.
had some strong swag when he rolled into the
Just so they
podcast
know.
today.
Thank you very much. And there was a bunch of ducks in the river pond. They call it a lake. It's not actually a lake. It's a river. And I was like so envious of the ducks. I'm like, that's the shit. Like, they're doing it because they're in synchronicity with nature. And then humans have drifted apart from that and started leaning into these stories of like, we're separate or we're on top or we're this and that. And a duck is going to experience, well, I don't know a lot about like duck physiology, but I imagine, my guess, my prediction is going to experience similar reactions in the form of fear responses and probably norepinephrine and cortisol and all the different things. But it's the story that wraps the fear that puts us as humans in this like double bind kind of straitjacket position. And it's like, it's not the fear itself. Like, it makes sense if you're going to go through some situation that your physiology shifts to respond. It's then you have the story wrapping that. And that's like your place to be able to renegotiate that story. And if you can come through and come to a place where of like just creating more neutrality around the story, that's like rite of passage is so important that we don't really have much of that in culture.
We don't have any of that in our society. Like a woman that goes into her menstrual cycle, like that's a rite of passage from a girl to a woman, or like initiation into a deeper level of her personal power. Yet, this is just one example, but it's like we're so shamed around our menstrual cycle, and it's disgusted, and it's like you hush and you stay silent about it and you push it down. And actually, what would it look like if we created a bridge of that rite of passage of initiating girls into womanhood and reminding them the power of what it means to have a portal between their legs from one dimension to the next, as opposed to shaming them and their own natural cycles and ultimately their own personal power,
or objectifying.
Exactly. We have a very big lack of rites of passages, for men, for women, for, it doesn't really matter, but it's just an initiation into a deeper level of claiming who we are, as opposed to continuing to perpetuate this unworthiness.
I think that's why there's so much reckless behavior among like adolescent males. Like, I had through age 18 to like 22, like college time frame, I had just like friends, like male friends, just dropping off, like dying because of like overdoses or drinking and driving or just doing stupid shit. And I think that like in my experience during that time frame, I was really enamored by like vandalization. I was enamored by drinking, trying to like compete to drink more than other people, trying to like beer bong a 40, and feeling like I like actually thought I was going to explode my stomach. I have to like go to the hospital. It was like, had a group of people, put the whole 40 in the beer bong, and like so much gas build up. Like, that was literally me creating like a pseudo rite of passage for myself because I was seeking that that passage into manhood. Am I a man? And so if we don't have something like that, I feel like we're going to it's going to trickle out, and we're going to seek it in various different maligned, or maybe not. Sometimes you might get into like rock climbing or get into I don't know, hiking in the woods or cold plunging or something else. Like, you may get dropped into something that actually is productive for you. But typically that takes guidance. And culturally, it feels like there's kind of like there is sources and pockets of deep wisdom and guidance, but it's not like the standard.
No. Yeah. It's a painful part of growing up. I mean, also in America, it's like, it's 5 generations old, and it's a melting pot of so many different cultures and so many different ways of living and perspectives, and people coming in from all many different countries all over the world, and coming to America to rest and find this resting place in the American dream. However, what didn't really necessarily And this is a whole deep topic in colonialism and all of the stuff, but
which I'd love to talk about, by the way. And then we can. I feel like maybe we'll wrap up in the next 20 minutes or so, but I would love to get into those parts as well. BPW.
This isn't like a surface level podcast, huh? Like you like to go there and like go right into the deepest places and just like poke me. You know, I like it. I'm here for it. Are you a great interviewer, by the way?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You're a great interview. Solid.
But we have become so disconnected with rites of passage and an opportunity for us to be able to actually meet ourselves in a way that is being represented by elders that are the embodiment of that we wish to become within ourselves, or that healthy role models, as opposed to like pop stars and the Kardashians. And you know, we have no rites of passage, and then we have these idols that we're all like these pop stars or whatever that we're
it's
looking
literally
up to.
insane. It's like literally like the definition. Like, oh, we're insane as a culture. And we can have compassion for that.
And then on top of that, the one playing card that we have, which is the numbers, is completely taken away from us. It will not taken away from us, but it is manipulated through divide and conquer. So like we divide the one playing card that humanity has, which is the numbers, and we're going to turn all of them against each other. And then feed it to them through every outlet possible. And through the music frequencies and through the media outlet, and just like it is frequency control of separation, fear. Fear is the easiest frequency to control.
What is the energy that is driving all of that? Because I don't think there's a single individual or even like I don't know much about like the Bilderberg Society or you know, the reptile people or whatever. It seems like there's more of like some broader consciousness or energy of sorts that might be driving some of those things. It seems like darkness, and then it seems like there's like this energy of lightness, and almost this is outside of my realm of embodiment and like understanding from an embodied way, but it seems almost like there's something else going on. It's like a Star Wars, Lord of the Rings kind of thing happening, and we're kind of these like nodes that we, you know, I call myself Aaron, you call yourself Blue, and then there's like this other plane that's manifesting itself, working through us. And then what do you think about that?
So my perspective on all of it is that if we were to think that we were the only species, like humans, in the vastness of the galaxies and the cosmos in which we operate in, I think that would be really naive perspective to think that we're the only ones. If you don't like really fully like grasp the magnitude of like what it means to be human, if we just recognize that we have this giant ball called the moon that illuminates us and controls all of the waters on our planet and the waters that live within our being and our emotional waters, and then also like the tides on the earth, and then there's this giant ball of fire that is like bringing light onto the planet and allows us to actually be able to have warmth and have cold days, and it's just like out there in this gaseous exchange of the cosmos, and then we're rotating on this axis while hurling through space at speeds that we can't even comprehend, but yet because of gravity we don't even feel it. Like the whole concept of we're looking up at a night sky and seeing all of these other stars that are twinkling and downloading codes and information, and then we think I'm sitting in my cubicle booth at my 9-to-5 job thinking that I am the only species that exists. Like there is a massive disconnect with the inherent magic nature of what it means to be human. It's like so mind-bending to me. And I've had interdimensional experiences. I've had moments of meditation that have catapulted me to another realm. I've been in a ceremony where I've seen people unlock the miraculous. I've experienced it within myself. There is definitely a multidimensional level to this game of life. And with that being said, I think the constructs on this planet that have been created from us. I think I still want to be careful with that blame piece, even on the meta perspective of like, it's the 1% or the reptilians. It's like, they may be there. Like, I don't know, because I fully with it, like with the capital K, I don't know, because I haven't met a reptilian. I haven't gone to the meeting of the 1% where they're all going, huh?
So you think.
What am I? My present awareness, I don't know. However, does that mean it's not happening? No. Does that mean it is happening? No. What I can perceive from my own unique lens is that there is constructs that are keeping people dumb. That is like experiences of like even just fluoride in our drinking water. Like, what the fuck's that? It's poison, you know? Like, why is that in our drinking water? There are so many deeper layers to this. However, I think that a very unevolved human consciousness has created these constructs. This is why, as we're evolving as a collective consciousness, these constructs are going to crumble. By 2027, we are going to go through a massive shift. Massive.
Why 2027?
2027 is the next 1 degree shift in consciousness. 2012 was a 0.5 degree shift. So like we went through like, 2012, people started waking up left, right, center. Like we have been going over for the past decade. We've been going through a massive shift in consciousness. And that's why you can see all of the rotten things at the foundation of humanity by the law of nature has to come up and out. And the structures that are in place right now are fucking rotten from the foundation. And it does not serve life. It does not care for life. It cares for profit. And that is a problem. And this is why we're seeing massive shifts happening. By 2027, we're gonna meet a really crazy apocalyptic experience.
Where does the 2027 number come from?
2027 from my conversation with Richard Rudd. And I have a podcast. We're doing a live podcast. Myself, Richard, and Zach Bush are all having a conversation about this very piece, and it's going to be in LA. Love for you to be there. May 9th.
What's the date? May 9th. Okay.
And it's going to be a very important conversation, but it's basically speaking about this piece of like, what is it going to look like with societal decline? Like as these structures start to crumble, and how do we navigate it? And how do we navigate it, recognizing that we are in this together? We cannot be operating from this lone wolf mentality. It's not going to work. Like the only way that the ants are powerful is that they come together and they build these massive anthills. They're huge, but if you look at the concept of how big they are, they're just like coming together and they're working together to build something more beautiful. And yeah, so I can feel it. If we're just paying attention, like the systems of control are collapsing right in front of our eyes. Who is behind it? I think we are behind it, which means that we can actually do something about it. That's the second I'm like, it's the reptilians. Like, God, I'm still back in victim frequency.
Wow. That's a really beautiful perspective. It's like it's within each individual that's playing the game.
Really. And that comes literally down to our relationship with our emotional state and how much we're blaming the world. If we end the wars within our own mind, we will start over a collective experience to end the wars on the planet. It's all directly linked.
So something I was reflecting on this morning before I came over, we've done an odd number of ceremonies together.
I thought about that last night.
I was like, hold on, why is that keep happening?
Tuning in with like, okay, there's 8 billion people on the planet. Got it. Right. That's a lot of people. I can't even comprehend how many people that is. We don't even know what 8 billion actually looks like, but it's a lot, right? And then there's like certain people that just keep showing up in my field in most random places, and not through like, oh, like you going, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to go too. Right, cool, I'll see you over out there. It's just like, end up in Mexico being like, hey, what's up, bro? Yeah. And this just happens over and over and over again with you and I, to the point where it's just like,
and then the darkness retreat kind of back to back as well. And I was like, oh, like that's a cool thing. And so I wanted to ask you, because I think that you're much more developed in those worlds than I am. Well, some part of me is as developed as anyone could be, and some part of every person is, but I think your conscious part of you is more developed in that place to be able to describe. Like, what is the ayahuasca world? Like, when you're in that space, like, what is that?
Oh, it's so difficult to almost limit with the English language what that is. And then again, depending on who you are, is what you're going to take from it. So it's a living transmission. It's not like just this is what it is. You know, from my lens, I can share with you how I've perceived that reality in that world. First and foremost, it's indigenous medicine that is cultivated through shakuna leaves and the ayahuasca vine, and it has been carried and held in a beautiful way by the indigenous communities and cultures in various different locations and And I am just a humble student of that medicine, and had the privilege and the blessing to be able to work closely with Indigenous communities and Indigenous elders that have been holding the medicine for generations, to allow myself to come into these worlds and to actually like receive the gift and the teachings of Pachamama in this medicine form, that then ingest it. And it's it's a very, very strong psychoactive experience, and get blasted out into the ethers, or just like end up like physically purging. But I've been on a very deep journey with that medicine for almost a decade, and a lot of solo time in the Amazon jungle of Peru for 3 weeks on end, water fasting for 8 days straight, dieting with a plant called Bobansana. I've also done a diet with machi mango, which is a tree in the Amazon jungle in Peru, and learning, or unlearning, actually is probably the best way to describe it. Unlearning so much of the shit that has been projected through the word should my entire life. Like, I mean, we all just get bored and get shutted on. Like, it's like, become these versions of ourselves that we think is deemed worthy because of all these shoulds that have like been plopped on me. And I think that's like probably the best way to describe it, is it gets me out of it has got me out of the thing that got me into it in the first place, and stops me looping in someone else's narrative of their map of consciousness projected onto my map of consciousness, that then has distorted the lenses and taken me 3 degrees away from my vibrational essence of the truth of who I am. And so what that medicine has given me the gift, and now I just want to put emphasis on the safe space, the discernment of who I sit with, where the medicine comes from, who's touched the medicine from the moment that it's been pulled off, that the vine's been pulled off the tree and the leaves have been put in the pot. Like, there is so much levels of discernment that is needed for this, because there's no joke, and I don't speak about this lightly. Like, that is a really important piece and component.
It's like volunteering yourself for psychological spiritual surgery.
Say that again.
It's like electing yourself for psychological spiritual surgery.
Exactly. Like, you wouldn't go into surgery when someone's scalpel is covered in dirt.
Yeah.
Like, hell no, you ain't gonna cut my brain open with that. You're gonna affect me.
Or you have maybe a suspicion they might sell your gallbladder.
It's like, while you're under, then your organs are on the black market and off they go. Yeah. No,
that's a thing.
It's a very real thing. And it's a really great example, actually, like representation of the importance of the discernment with this work. So again, another disclaimer on that, of like talking about these topics, because talking about these sort of topics comes with the responsibility of creating also a disclaimer around it. However, when all of those pieces are in place, that you trust the space of the life, that these people that are holding the medicines are like deep on the path, this is their lifeblood, the way that they serve the medicine, like the people, the shamans that I've sat with in the jungle, like this is for 5 generations, this is what they've done. And there's also a sacred reciprocity that's really, really important too, because I think in the Western world, like it's in the consumerism mindset. It's like, what can I get from this experience? And we're extracting these indigenous wisdoms and teachings, and then taking it to our benefit, and then kind of just like extracting and not creating a reciprocity. So a sacred reciprocity is infused into the vibration of the medicine. So also making sure that the shamans are fully taken care of, that they're very nourished, that they're being supported for their time, that their families are taken care of, that when we come in with these large amounts of resources, that it's being distributed in a way that actually genuinely supportive for their livelihood. Now, when all of these places are put in place, then we can have a very, very powerful experience. And for me, I've gone deep into healing my hearing. And I went into telling you this story, but I didn't finish it when we were around the fire, when Boyd was telling stories of it for service. Yeah. And you asked me, like, how's your hearing, and have you got your hearing aids in? And I started telling you that I just came back from the jungle in Peru, and I worked with a shaman out there, similar to Justina, which is the woman that we worked with. He did the same dieta with camalonga, which is one of the plants that teaches them how to do a very specific modality of healing, which is an extraction. And I went out there, and we went for the consultation, and they asked me like what it is that I want to work with, what is my intention. Again, that's another massive piece. It's like, what is your intention? Like, it is medicine. We're going for heal. We're not here to like, you know, Cinco Maya in a circle and just get high and like get out of our heads. Like, actually it's going so deep into the pieces that you've not faced. It's not necessarily a pleasant experience. It's genuine healing. It's the difference between drugs and medicine. It's like, it's medicine. And they asked me, you know, like, what is it that you want to heal? And I'm like, I'm still really would love to bring my hearing back as much as possible if that's available. And they were like, yeah, we can heal that. Like, super casual. They felt very confident about it. And I was like, I really appreciate your level of confidence. You know, you sit in the presence of someone and that's like, yeah, we can totally heal that. I'm like, oh, well, it's a seed planted in my belief that actually is possible. And they brought me up in the middle of the ayahuasca ceremony, and they laid me on the healing mat, and this one of the shamans, he put camalonga and fermented onions and garlic, and it was a very strong stench, and he like swirled it in his mouth, and he just latched on to my ear and like onto the actual ear itself, and then below the ear and around the back of the ear and the top of the ear. And it was like this like dense energy eating worm that was on me. It was like and just sucking, and I could feel all this energy being pulled up through my ears. And he did it on both sides, and then he would just purge hard. Like, what I mean by purge is like vomit, like so much was coming out of him, and he was basically sucking the distortion of, I don't want to hear this, I don't want to hear this, I don't want to hear this. The story that I said to myself as a kid in school, whatever. I didn't want to hear this. It preserved my internal innocence, and it served a purpose, but it's also not serving a purpose right now. And he was like sucking it out of my head. And after 2 ceremonies, I significantly noticed a difference. Like, for the most part, most people don't know that I have a hearing challenge, and I don't wear my hearing aids all the time. There are definitely certain situations where I was like, oh, Blue, yeah, I forgot, like, she's hard of hearing. However, I do really believe that I've been able to significantly start the healing journey with actually healing this ailment through the indigenous medicines and the wisdom keepers that are on our planet.
Have you ever heard of the rubber hand experiments, where you can take somebody's hand, you put like your right hand down on the table, and then you put your left hand or whatever behind your back, and then you have a long sleeve shirt, and you have a rubber hand there, and then and
they feel the pain.
You'll tickle your hand that's behind your back while simultaneously tickling the rubber hand on the table, and that will start to cortically map that hand as actually being a part of you. Yeah. What's interesting about that is the hand that is being forgotten behind your back, like your biological hand, will actually start to have diminished blood flow, and will start to become colder and start to become like actually like a vestigial part of yourself.
Wow.
And and then also if it is if you like, you know, wound that hand or anything, it'll have like a hyperimmune response as well. So it's like it gets like dysregulated. And it's through that belief system that it's not a part of you. I think that's just a powerful metaphor. Just kind of sit on.
I believe in the placebo effect. Like, in the sense of, if it's like believing is seeing, not seeing is believing. And if I believe in the core of my being, in my hearing actually healing, regardless of what it is that the shaman's doing.
And perhaps releasing attachment.
Huh?
And perhaps releasing attachment to outcomes as well.
And that's also been a huge part of the journey for me. Yeah. It's like, if this is actually it, am I at peace with that? Yeah, I've received so much beautiful thing. I will continue to receive so much beauty from being the student of this experience. Once I shifted it from this is happening to me, this is happening for me and through me. It's a completely different narrative. And fuck yeah, am I going to go play with the shamans and like figure out if that's also a thing that can happen? Like, I'm going to go and be the student of them and recognize that there is so much profound magic and healing and wisdom and things that are so far beyond anything I even know in this moment. And I don't know what I don't know, but I'm definitely, if there's an opportunity to present itself, I'm going to go sit there and be a student, release all attachment and expectation, and open myself up to miracles. Why not? I'll probably see you there.
Statistically speaking, it's likely. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me. I'm so grateful that you asked me to come on the podcast.
We did like a whole rocket ship experience.
It was a rocket. We prayed. We went off on a journey. Coming back down. It's the yin and yang. I'm looking at the screen. You and I are black and white.
Black and white.
We didn't call. Well,
yeah, you're right.
You see that?
You mentioned that now, but now I look at the screen. I'm like, oh wow.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
That's a vibe.
It's such a vibe. I called you on the third iPhone before I came, and I asked you what you were wearing.
Wow. Look at that. Thank you so much for everything.
Yeah, thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Where should people? You have a course the end of this month, which is this
March.
month would be March. Yeah, when we release this.
The end of March. So I am currently in the enrollment process for our next round of Fluorescence. Fluorescence is a modern mystery school for women. I'm the co-founder alongside my dear sister, Reggie Ruverbear, and we are taking women through a 7-week online program with an in-person immersion at the end, which is basically locking in the pillars of the temple of a life of absolute magic. So we're going into the gene keys and unlocking our blueprint through the hologenetic profile. We have the founder of the gene keys coming in as a guest speaker and doing an opening and invocation for the women that are there. And then we are also going into the microbiome of our gut with Zach Bush, and he is guiding all of the women into healing our gut, therefore also our relationship with the earth and how that is deeply interconnected. We go into activating the modern the modern medicine woman, and remembering what it truly means to be a modern medicine woman of ancient arts in modern time, and activating it within ourselves. We go inside the soundscape and we learn about how to create media and music as medicine, and we activate our voices within that space. We have Matthias De Stefano coming in, and he is also guiding us into connecting with the art of manifestation through unlocking the memory of our past lives, which our present lives are currently running. So, I mean, there's a lot of magic. This is like action packed. With Richard Rudd, Zach Bush, and Matthias De Stefano, we have an all-star lineup. This is the best favorite offering I ever have to date. And then at the end of the experience, we have an in-person meetup and a ceremonial container that closes. And then after that, we have the next round, which is once you've done the foundational course and you have the tools in your tool belt to learn the art of integration and sisterhood and accountability. Then I'm partnering, Fluorescence is partnering with Warrior Retreats, who is founded by my dear brother, Brandon Collinsworth. And we have Warrior Women, which is taking a group of women down to the Amazon jungle for a dieta with 4 master shamans, and dieting with Bob and Sana, and that is the second level. But we don't bring anyone to the medicine and into these indigenous cultures without the necessary modalities and tools to allow them to support with their integration, with allowing everything and the insights that have been churned up while working with the plant medicine to be integrated into the core of their being, so that it actually supports them in their life and does not create more unnecessary healing work that needs to be done.
That sounds pretty good.
It's pretty epic.
All right. Well, I have a lot to stew on.
Yeah, right. Like something to chew on after this experience.
We'll do a little digestion from
Perfect. This. Oh, and also, by the way, if you want to follow me on Instagram, that's where a lot of magic happens.
Oh, Grandma. Blue of Earth.
BLU of Earth. Blue represents beauty, love, and unity.
And you also have a podcast.
Do you have a podcast?
Deja Blue.
Deja Blue podcast, which Aaron has been a guest on and will continue to be a guest on. And
I feel like we should do another one now that we're like 6 ayahuasca ceremonies and darkness retreats.
Yeah.
And lots of like growth. I don't know, when did we do that? It was probably 3 years ago.
Which one?
When I recorded on yours.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it was a hot minute ago. It was before I even had my studio. Like we just got video. We're much more evolved now. We're in season 3. We're coming in some hot guests.
Coming in hot.
It really is. Like the podcast is really doing well at the moment, and it's just continuing to snowball and do its thing. And it would be great to have you back on and be able to continue to unpack the wisdom that you have extracted from all of the beautiful initiations that you've placed yourself in since we last connected over the podcast.
I'm down.
Yeah, cool.
That is it. That is all. Is there anything else to share before wrapping this piece up?
Just gratitude for you asking the like really deep questions and peeling back the layers of what it really means to be human, and to not be afraid to go into these like taboo subjects and to start illuminating them through your own unique truth and asking really, really brilliant questions that brings it out within others. And it is like a gift to be able to be here. And so thank you for the work that you're doing. I appreciate you. Thank you for being such a
really amazing. You're like tapped into some type of like sage energy of sorts. It's really beautiful to be around. I don't know that it's you that did that or I don't know who to thank exactly, but just like general thank you.
Just, yeah.
Thanks to the blue beings. For bringing that in, the blue beings. Exactly.
I'm just going to be mysterious and leave it on that.
Yeah. And thank you, specifically. All right, that is it. That is all. Thank you all for tuning in. And I'll see you next week. Pow.